into talking everything about books. I have always been a reader, but I guess I go through phases where I'm either all in or I just do not read at all. And having since moved into my apartment a couple of years ago, I don't think I've picked up a book. But I guess this whole book talk world and on YouTube as well has definitely opened my eyes to a lot of books that I didn't know were out there. And I guess I haven't been into a bookstore for a while either. Late last year, I would say around November, I picked up another book and I haven't stopped since. So the main aim of it was to get off my phone because I'm very aware that I definitely spend too much time on my phone. So that was the main aim, just to switch off as well. So just to get completely immersed by a book. So, and I'm sure a lot of you feel exactly the same. You just kind of get lost in a book and you kind of forget about everything else around you, and yeah, you can just switch off from the world for a little bit. So I thought I would go through a few books that I guess got me started, but I've also kind of dived in and read some books that I normally wouldn't read. And I'm trying to diversify it a bit, like not just go, obviously there's series and, you know, books that follow one another. So I haven't actually kind of followed through apart from one series. But I want to open up my eyes to a few different genres and just try a few things out. So let's go through this pile of books and I will show you the books that got me back into reading. First, I need to switch this around. I did put it in a certain order and I realized that what I need is at the bottom. So let me do that. Okay, the first book, and I don't know why I did this to myself, but I guess it was what was trending at the time. And it was a thick one and a sad one. This is a Japanese author. I'm sure you've heard of it. A Little Life. There's a lot of, I guess, trigger warnings with this, but the writing is beautiful. There are a lot of topics in this that are awful. It does follow a group of friends and you just see, I guess there's one main character who we follow right through and how his friends come in and out of his life. This is a tough book. And I guess most people who read this find that as you're reading it, you either need to do it in sections or, you know, come back to it, have a little break. It is really long, but it stays in your mind, and this character doesn't leave your mind as you're reading it, and I still think about him to this day. But also a tough book to be back into reading, but I really enjoyed this one, and I guess this just got me hooked again, so highly recommend. Next book, and by no surprise at the time, I was a bit late to the party, but I knew the following book was coming out, so I picked up Fourth Wing. This was obviously going crazy at the time. Another thick book as well. This was my first fantasy. I hadn't really, apart from like, I guess if you, back in the day when I read Twilight or Harry Potter or something, I quite enjoyed this. I got sucked in right till the very end. Obviously had to pick up the next one, which is a little further down on my list. If you want to get into fantasy, this is amazing to get into. It's easy to follow. There are some weird names, and I guess it doesn't really matter when you read it. Like, make it up in your head. Even the world building and that kind of thing, you just go with the flow. Like, if you don't get it, keep reading. There's always a bit of enemies to lovers and that kind of thing. So there's always a bit of everything in these kind of books. But yes, get onto that one. Another one I got sucked into that was really popular at the time is Tomorrow, Tomorrow and Tomorrow. And this was something very different to what I would normally read as well. The story was quite believable. Like, it's hard to think these characters don't exist in real life. I would read this author again. Like, I quite liked her writing. I really enjoyed this. It was about gaming, and like the creators, these characters created a game together, and kind of their life span creating it. I think it's got some mixed reviews, but I definitely give it a go. Now for something completely different, and I've had this on my bookshelf for a couple of years, and I don't know why I haven't read it. It is Ghost by Dolly Alderton. She has a couple of other books that she wrote prior to this one, which I have and I haven't read either, and they are different to this. Her writing is so easy to read. I just flew through this book. It was so funny and just really lighthearted, and a lot of relatable content too. And I guess this is a book that you can relate to, I guess, in dating life. Girls who have been through a lot of what this character has gone through as well. Nice and big text, and we love that. And a nice floppy book. I don't know, does anybody else find that really satisfying? That, I don't know, I love a good book. Like, I'm not a spine creaser, but I do love when a book just is floppy. Now, getting on BookTok, and maybe more so on YouTube, the Magnolia Parks universe, whatever you want to call it. And the moment I heard it was like a mix of Gossip Girl, Essex. This is like Gossip Girl, but with a whole bunch of drama. These characters kind of brutal to one another, but they're from rich families and they're in London, and it kind of sets the tone for the drama that's about to unfold. But this is the first one in this series, and I will be getting the others, and it follows Magnolia and the next character, Daisy. This whole dating world, and these two characters cross paths as well. So I guess in the next book we hear more from Daisy, but Magnolia and BJ are the main in this one, and every chapter you just don't know what's going to happen next. It's like to and fro from Magnolia and BJ's perspective, and it goes back and forth, and you want to hit each one of them on the head, but I think it's just what makes it, you just want to keep reading and you just can't stop. So I'm excited to keep reading this series. Now, I can't believe I went from Magnolia Parks to the next book. I've always had this fascination with either historical fiction from World War II or more biographies or memoirs of people's experiences with World War II. The Jewish people that went to concentration camps that have written memoirs and their experiences. The Happiest Man on Earth. And I guess this is a bit of a different perspective because he tells his story very simply. Obviously very traumatic to retell this kind of story, but obviously by the title of the book too, he has a different perspective on life too. So for someone who went through so much trauma, it's an amazing read. Very short. I flew through it. I basically read it in a day. So I love this quote. Life can be beautiful if you make it beautiful. It's up to you. Anyone who hasn't read anything about World War II, I highly recommend, because it gives you a different perspective on life. You can't believe something like this has ever happened in real life. It gives you a real insight into that world back then. Another couple of books that I continued reading from authors that I'd already read was another Dolly Alderton book, Good Material. And this was quite interesting because it is written in the male's perspective. So this male has just broken up with his girlfriend of many years, and how he gets through life after. And I kind of felt frustrated for him for a long time because I was like, just get over it. Like, you're not going to get back together. But he did it tough. And I don't think I've ever read a book where you hear the male's perspective. It's always got to do with the girl. This whole book went through his perspective and how he coped with the breakup. But what I found interesting was right at the end, the last chapter, it's the girl's perspective. And I've never related to something more, hearing her side of the story as well. So it's an easy read. She writes really nicely. And it just, I read this in a couple of days, I think. So if you want to get out of a reading slump, get onto this one. Now, following Fourth Wing, I had to read Iron Flame. To say the least, this intimidated me a lot. It is huge. I wasn't really sure I was going to like the follow-on to this. I love Fourth Wing, but there were moments here and there where I kind of just wasn't that interested. I find that there's chapters in fantasy books that, for me, aren't necessary, and I found that a lot in this book. If this could have been a couple of 100 pages shorter, I may have got through it a bit quicker, but I really I pushed through to get to the end of this. Yeah, this was a tough one. I'm not very convincing, am I? I don't know whether I'll read the next book. I'm undecided. Maybe it depends if it's thick or not, but we'll see. If you love fantasy, some people love it, some people don't, so yeah, recommend, maybe. Now, an author I've wanted to read for a long time, and I got a couple of her books over Christmas, and it is Emily Henry, and I started with Beach Read, obviously the first one. Not that there's an order to these, I just read this one first, and it was fun. I feel like she writes like, when you're reading, it's like a movie playing in your head. It's a real rom-com kind of feel. This one was interesting because they are both writers, and you see how they're both trying to write at the same time, and they do like a little bet between each other who can write a better rom-com, and the guy obviously doesn't write that kind of way, and I think he has this belief that rom-coms are easy to write. I don't know. Maybe they are easy to write, but I think getting the right combination of, making things not so predictable. This was good. Had a nice ending. If you want just a good, light-hearted read, this one's great. The last book I finished, I've wanted to read these for a while, and it's based in a coffee shop in Tokyo, and there's a seat in this coffee shop that takes you back to the past. The catch is you get poured a coffee and you have to come back to the present before the coffee gets cold. So we go through, in 4 different chapters, 4 visitors. One goes back to confront someone that she's liked in the past. One who receives a letter from a husband whose memory is gone. One sees her sister for the last time, and one meets a daughter that they'd never got the chance to know. So these are nice little stories, a little sad, but I quite liked the shortness of each one, and even though they were 4 separate stories, they were all based in this cafe. And there's 3 other books in this series as well that just continue on, and you see how desperate people are to go back into the past, but obviously you can't change the past. There's always that dilemma of, if you go back, is it really going to solve anything? Is it going to make you feel any better when you come back? So each scenario is very different. So I quite enjoyed this one, and I think I've got the second one, but we'll see if I pick up the third and fourth. And then currently I am reading Divine Rivals, and this is a little bit, I guess, fantasy, but I find this one so far, I've got through majority of the book this week. It's really easy to read, and I already picked up the second one, so I'm excited to find out what happens. But basically, these 2 journalists are communicating through this kind of typewriter that sends the letter through to a cupboard, and these typewriters interconnect, and the girl doesn't know who the letters are coming from, but it's the journalist who she's worked with. So we go on this journey. I am yet to find out. I don't want any spoilers, but I'm excited to finish this and get on to the next one. So this is the end of my journey back into reading again. I think I did pretty well in the last few months. I think before the end of last year, I got through about 10 books. So that is a lot more than I've read in the past few years. I'm not going to stop yet. There are a lot of books when I go into the bookstore that I want to get as well, but I am refraining until I get a few more off my TBR. Is that what it is? I feel like I'm so old when I say that. I'm not up with the lingo, but anyway, If you're interested in any reading content, I have lots of reviews on my Instagram. I have a huge list on Goodreads that I want to read, and I think that's a really good way of kind of making a list of what you want to read, so you don't forget. But don't also get trapped into just what's popular. I find some people can be very convincing, but I think you've just got to read what makes you happy. If it's fantasy, get lost in that world, or if it's romance, whatever you like, just get into reading. It just helps you escape for a few hours. I've been trying to do at least like 50 pages a day, that kind of thing, but I don't put a limit on it. I just go with the flow, and if I feel like reading, I'll just switch everything off. Tell me what your favorite books are below. I'm always up for new reads, even if they're not popular and they're not on Book Talk, or I'm having a good time reading again, and I can't wait to get stuck into some more. I hope you enjoyed it. I will see you in the next video. Leave a comment down below and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.